Our resident lawyer, Despina Prialo of boutique legal firm Prialo Legal in Runaway Bay is with us every Thursday to offer her expertise, and she has plenty of it in the area of law by providing some general advice on the latest hot topics, and they are coming thick and fast too. Of course, having experience spanning more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law, she joins us now. Morning, Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Despina. So first up, we're talking about defamatory comments on social media. Could the owner of a Facebook page be held liable for what a third party posts? This is so interesting because it does obviously affect so many people listening. And a big High Court case has come from this, hasn't it, Despina?
It has, and we're going to talk about this because on the show previously, I have provided my opinions about being careful generally on a day-to-day basis about putting comments out there on social media platforms, and about being careful about what you post and thinking twice about the comments that you might think, but perhaps not necessarily it's the right thing to do to actually write it and post it on a social media platform for fear of course, potential defamation lawsuits. And other issues. We now have a landmark decision because it's from the High Court. So therefore, it is a landmark decision and a very important one. So recently, the High Court determined that certain media companies were found to be publishers of comments made by third parties on their Facebook page. So that is a very interesting case, and it's a High Court case. And as I said before, if it's from the High Court, then you know it's the end of the road and it's the final determination. So I thought we'd talk about this morning and potential implications for people like you and me or other businesses out there who might obviously have a Facebook page and who might post articles. And what would happen as a result of this case to those people if third parties are posting comments that aren't really nice comments or potentially defamatory comments, and the potential liability.
Okay, so in other words, you're saying that someone who comments on something perhaps that you post on your own, say, personal Facebook page could actually have legal ramifications for you.
100%, which is why we really need to talk about this case so people are aware, because I have put up, I suppose you could call it warnings before on the show, but about being careful about what you post. And now we have this High Court case saying, well, in this particular scenario, and it was involving Fairfax Media and News Corp, they were found to be publishers of third-party comments. Fairfax Media and News Corp posted an article on their Facebook page a few years ago about a person called Mr. Voller. And Mr. Voller was, the article was about his incarceration in a juvenile justice detention centre. So it was an article posted about that, about him and his situation. And then what happened as a result, as I understand from the case I've read, is that there were a lot of third parties putting comments on the Facebook page that Fairfax Media and News Corp obviously owned and managed about that article. And some of those comments were potentially defamatory. So in terms of whether they are defamatory, the parties are still going off to the courts in the future to determine whether they are in fact defamatory. But this case was about whether those media companies that host Facebook pages were considered to be publishers and therefore liable for any comments made by these third parties. And they were found that they were liable. And it was interesting in this case that the media companies argued it in a few different ways. And one of those was, well, we didn't even know that these comments were made. We had no actual knowledge that they were being made on the Facebook page, and we didn't know about it. We had no actual knowledge, so why should we be liable? So that was something that they put up from their end. And as a result, what the court said is, well, you've put up an article on your Facebook page, and in their view, what you've done is you have facilitated, encouraged, and thereby assisted third parties to put up comments on your Facebook page, and therefore you became publishers.
So do you know if they, I guess, reacted with these sort of comments? Because obviously at the moment we can like certain things and we can reply to certain things. So in their defense, they said they didn't even see it. They didn't comment on it. It was just a comment sitting there on the article, and now they're held liable.
Well, the court clearly said the actual knowledge is irrelevant.
Wow.
It's actually irrelevant. So what they have said is that you have got a Facebook page, you put up a particular article, you posted it, and then what's happened as resulted by doing that, you facilitated and encouraged relevant communication and participated in the communication of defamatory matter to a third person just by doing that. So it's a really significant case. And I suppose when they referred to the area of tort, which they did in the case, and there's strict liability there, from my reading of the case, it really spoke this to me, and that is that companies such as this or other parties, where you put up potentially an article like this that may be controversial, you really ought to have known or should have known, for example, that there'd be third parties that could post potential defamatory material.
Yep. So in other words, it doesn't matter if you're a big company like Fairfax or News Corp, or even just an individual who puts up an article like this that could potentially bring some comments that could be defamatory. Essentially, you've got to monitor your social media all the time. That's what you're saying, aren't you?
Well, you do, and you have to be responsible. And this is what the court's message, I think, really is. And it's really come about by this prolific use of social media platforms over a period of, say, the last 5 to 10 years. And the court is moving, it's advancing with that, and it's moving with the times, and it's saying, well, we need to take a stance here because of what's happening out there in society and about the prolific use of social media, where we have seen, for example, unmitigated social media mob attacks on people, and they've used social media to do that.
Yeah.
You see, so they've said, well, look, in this case, we're going to make these media companies in this scenario liable, and we're going to consider them publishers of that third party commentary and material. So I think the message from this case is, yes, if you've got a Facebook page, whether you're an individual, a small business, or a big conglomerate corporation, you now need to have someone manage the Facebook page. Perhaps put a moderating system in place. So there would be a moderator per se that would constantly monitor third-party comments that come in, that wouldn't just be immediately posted up on the Facebook page. So someone basically checks it, checks to see if the comment is suitable, if it's within their own boundaries that they set within their own companies, and whether it will be potentially defamatory. And if it's accepted, it gets posted. If it doesn't get accepted, then it gets rejected and it's never posted.
Sure, yeah. And there is an option now that I've seen too for a few publications to disable comments as well. So obviously you don't want to stop completely putting out certain content just because you're scared of someone commenting. So there is certain options, isn't there, that you can disable comments completely if needed?
Yes, I believe when this particular scenario came about and these comments were made, that function was not available. Yeah. But now those functions are available. And really some important comments that the judges made, which I thought I'd mention too, because I really want to bring it home to people that we are really seeing interesting times now, and the court's moving with that and having to take a stance. So one of the things that a couple of the justices said is this, and I quote, that they've said here that the media companies' attempts to portray themselves as passive and unwitting victims of Facebook's functionality as having an air of unreality, and that having taken the commercial benefit of the Facebook functionality, yes, the media companies must bear the legal consequences. Yep. That's a very interesting and important message to take from this case.
Yeah, something for all of us to take on board with our socials.
Absolutely.
That has just been a Priala from Priala Legal. And coming up next, Blockdown Blitz. High-rise buildings are now being categorised as high-risk premises in New South Wales. More on that topic coming up. You're listening to Radio 97.